Okay, so the first presentation is labeled How to Make Your Marketing Durable, which we'll talk about in a second. So by the end of this presentation, which is about 20 minutes long, we're going to talk about how to learn to avoid the one big marketing campaign. I'll explain what that means. By the end, you should learn how to test your way into a second really strong and reliable marketing source. This could also be a second revenue source. And then lastly, the goal is to approach your marketing, regardless of company size, vertical, profit, or nonprofit, like a startup, introducing some innovation, which I think for some people here, there's a really vibrant culture of innovation at their organizations. And for others, you might be thinking, oh, maybe I can bring something home today that instills some of that. So this is just really quick, 20 seconds. Just think about it in your head. Describe the one channel, tactic, or revenue source your business or organization depends on most. So think like, okay, where do we spend most, maybe all of our time on the marketing side? Or what is the revenue source for our organization that is 95% of our revenue? And the second part of that question is, what is the digital camera that obliterates that revenue source, or that obliterates that marketing channel, that just closes that door? And that's a harder one, a more challenging one to think, what could that look like? Okay, so everyone has that. We'll come back to this. All right, so quick disclaimer. So these are concepts that Pintler Group, in front of a laptop have been practicing. These are strategies, tactics that we work with our clients on. This is sort of ingrained in our culture. I'm kind of comparing this to when a stand-up comedian workshops material in a small dive bar for the first time. I have not presented or articulated exactly this strategy in this format before. So at the end, I'll be looking for additional feedback on, yeah, that made sense to me, or the presentation, got a bit off course. So keep that in mind. Okay, so first question: if we had to think of the definition for the opposite of fragile, what would you think that definition is? Any
durable.
Sure. Yeah, durable, resilient. Fragile, you might think this is a container. You got to handle with care. The contents inside are delicate. Durable, maybe like a United Airlines employee, you can throw this thing around and the contents inside stay relatively intact. So the argument that I want to put forward today, and that this content is based around, is the concept of antifragile. These are things that thrive, improve, and grow actually because of stress. So this says, please mishandle. You could throw that on a package, and if you shake the package, the content inside actually gets stronger. Here are some real-world examples of things that would be considered anti-fragile. Bones or muscles. Bones get denser when you introduce a heavy load to them. This is also the most excited I've ever seen somebody doing deadlifts. Other examples of anti-fragile. Trees. So these notes say roots on the lee side, when exposed to wind, actually thicken and change shape. Roots on the windward side become more flexible, helping trees withstand stronger gusts. So trees actually become stronger when exposed to the elements. Anti-fragile. A good example is this: if you were to grow a tree in a glass dome, it might from the outside look really strong and durable, but you might be able to just go push that tree over because it has never developed a strong root system. Here's my theory of the case. Marketing is a field and a discipline that benefits from introducing stress and small experiments. And this is doable to everyone in this room. This is not, sometimes when we say the word experiment in marketing, people's eyes gloss over and they're like, well, does that mean we have to find statistical significance? Does this mean I need spreadsheets of hypotheses? And the answer is no, you can do this. And in fact, it's our belief that it's required to survive wind events and digital cameras, or the future. Here are 3 books that have kind of inspired this concept. Anti-Fragile, Black Swan, and the Strategy Paradox. These are some, you might call it, some of them philosophy books, and then strategy books, but not specifically marketing books. So we've taken these concepts and applied it to the work we do. Here is a quick gut check for everyone in the room, just something to think about briefly. Have you placed a small bet? This could be something that's 10% or less of your total marketing budget in the last 6 months that did not work out. You could consider this a failed experiment. Maybe you even got like reprimanded because it didn't work and you spent $1,000 on it. Hopefully not, but think real quick. Have we done this? Anybody have an example of an experiment they ran on the smaller side that did not work? Yeah, Jay.
Hi, I'm Jay. I work with the Alumni Association. So a little bit of context, we were trying to go out to Chicago to do an event for alumni, and we ran some just targeted Facebook and Instagram ads, and it did not perform well at all. And so it's very small budget there, but we just wanted to try it out, and we ended up canceling the event because no one responded and knew about the event. So
yeah,
we just scrapped it.
But you tried it.
But we tried.
And maybe it worked. Maybe it would have worked. Or maybe it could have worked. And then you said, hey, we found something that we found a playbook that we can duplicate across different cities. But instead, you're like, okay, we got to try something else. That's a great example. Anybody else? Yeah, Nicole.
I can't say that it's not working yet, and I can't say if it is working. We're doing this billboard campaign that we really push for, but we haven't had the capacity to follow up and do a really comprehensive follow-up with everything with that billboard campaign. So I feel a little like we just spent a lot of money, and I maybe didn't support it enough. I don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no way to measure it.
Yeah, that's another attribution boondoggle a bit, is how do you measure the impact of a billboard campaign? But that's a great experiment, and also something that's never been done, right? So it's trying something new. And if you're wondering, like, what does this look like for my business if the top performing channel just disappears? I'll give you some examples throughout the last decade or so. This is South by Southwest, large marketing, tech, music conference out of Austin. Tens of thousands of people show up. This picture was taken in 2019. Their main channel, their main revenue driver is, of course, in-person attendance. Well, you can imagine their marketing team around a conference room in late 2019. Okay, we're gonna, run the same playbook. We're gonna get attendees, and this is, of course, South by Southwest in 2020. We all, hopefully don't have to remember immediately the pandemic, but in-person events, their channel was completely obliterated. This is a tale of Blue Apron, the food recipe kit. Anybody remember Blue Apron during the heyday of food delivery kits? And it's still happening to some ways, but their one big channel, their one big idea was meta ads. So this was a headline, the best performing Facebook ads in 2017 and why they work, which, as an aside, is a good reason to, or a good reminder that a lot of these articles that come across our desk have a really short expiration date. So Blue Apron, this is what their Facebook ad looked like. This came from that article. Here's what a perfect meta ad, or at the time it was Facebook ad looks like. Drove people to the site. In 2016, their customer acquisition cost was $94. They could run this playbook on repeat and grow to become a public company worth billions of dollars, which they did. Unfortunately, there was no customer loyalty. Competitors were everywhere. They just flooded the market. Anna is going to be talking about how to make sure that customer loyalty is the thing that we're all thinking about. And then by 2018, their customer acquisition cost was $400. So the math ceased to work. They were selling dollar bills for 50 cents, which is not a great business model. Blue Apron daily closing stock. This was in 2023 when they sold to Wonder. You can see they went from well over $1,500 to essentially sold for parts. Okay, so Kyle, how do we avoid total ruin? By placing a lot of small bets. this is heads you lose, tails you win really big. So Jay, for your example, it's like you flipped a coin, you tried some meta ads to get people to sign up for an event in Chicago. It didn't work out, you lost. On the flip side, had it worked, potentially you would have won really big. You had a playbook that you could then take city by city by city. This is a framework, and we will share these presentations as well. I should have mentioned that, so we'll share all of this information and frameworks. This is called the marketing barbell. If you can't see this, this is the safe side, and this is the bold side. So if you were thinking, okay, what is the one channel that works really well for us? Park that right here on the safe side. That is 80 to 90% the stuff that currently works. This might be email marketing. That works really well. For a lot of our clients, that's things like Google paid search. That works really well. And that's on the safe side, the 90% that works. I have a lot of disclaimers in this presentation. Quick disclaimer. If you don't know what should go in this box, that's not like a red flag, huge issue, but that's probably step one. So before you start, okay, we got to innovate, you first have to figure out what is that low risk, what are those low risk channels, what is our main source of revenue, and be really certain about that. Also, a disclaimer, if you do know, but you found yourself thinking, oh, that main revenue driver that I mentioned when I wrote, or when I was thinking what is my main channel or main source of revenue, if it's 100% of your business, that's also a pretty big risk. Or if you only use email marketing, that's, again, another big risk. Here is the percentage breakdown that we like to see. 90%, you can stay right there in that safe, cozy, status quo, what's working, let's keep doing that. However, make sure that you are placing those 10% bets, and we'll talk about what those bets look like. So here's some example. Speculative channels on the 10% side. ChatGPT just came out with an advertising platform. Small businesses now have access to advertise their businesses through ChatGPT. And so Andy got some early access, tested it out. We spent $300 just testing it for ourselves. Was it $100? Yeah. 100, very small budget. $100 testing out for ourselves, and you just slacked the results just this week, and we're like.
It was like 1,700 impressions and 15 clicks, I think. But the cool thing is that's guaranteed exposure on one of the hottest networks at the moment.
So right now we're like, hey, we're not willing to change our whole business model and say we are Pintler Group. We only run ChatGPT ads, but we did this little experiment and we said, okay, there's something more to explore here. And we'll share some of the channels that you can ignore because they're complete garbage trash. And then, so what's in the middle? And this is a good gut check as well. So the middle, things to avoid. Again, you want to be on the barbell. That's why we call it the marketing barbell. These are things like oversaturated channels, display ads that get less than 0.1% click-through rate. Someone sees it, it's just fatigue now, it's just noise. This came from a presentation. Anna went to Austin and heard a great presentation that she shared with our team about content, copy on your website. Nicole kind of talking about how do you communicate your brand. They said avoid white, round, flavorless content. And I just love that visual of like, oh yeah, we've all read this before and maybe we've all been guilty of writing it. Just avoid that. Things that are professionally correct but not interesting. 3-in-a-tree photos. Does anybody know what 3-in-a-tree photos are? We've got a lot of higher ed representation here. Liv, have you heard of this before? 3-in-a-tree. Okay, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Are you ready? 3-in-a-tree. This comes from marketing publications. If you go to a higher ed website or get sent a higher ed packet, you'll start to see it everywhere. 3-in-a-tree. 3-in-a-tree. There's 4-in-a-tree on this one. And then this one I think is my favorite. We've all been part of these photo shoots where someone holds something up and it's like, okay, pretend like he's showing you something funny and you have to like laugh. And anyway, 3-in-a-tree. Avoid 3-in-a-tree. This could be any college campus anywhere USA, although at least they do have branded hoodies on. What does this look like in practice? So I'm going to share a couple things that we've tested at Pintler Group. 10% experiments, so on the bold side of the barbell, typically have a J-curve where there's a little bit of a dip out front. Maybe it's a small investment. For us, for like ChatGPT ads, that was $100. All right, we're going to invest $100. Let's see what works. I'm not ready to say that it was a resounding success yet, but this is what the J-curve looks like. Low downside, high upside. Heads you lose, tails you win really big. Reddit ads. So this is something, Lito's in the audience with Montana Scouting. And this is something we tested with scouts targeting parents on Reddit. And we invested some, we learned a fair amount. Similar to where we were at with kind of ChatGPT right now is cool, useful, but we have other channels that perform better, but we had a really good learning. And it was kind of an underutilized channel. Just not a lot of people are advertising on that channel with smaller budgets. You see big brands doing it, but not a lot of smaller budgets. Connected TV. So this is something that we ran pretty full force with the University of Montana and have been really impressed. And if I had to forecast, this trajectory is going up and to the right. We were really impressed with the targeting of connected TV. This is, Anna, where did those serve? It was Hulu, Disney, it was all the streaming channels essentially. Yeah.
Specifically, but with that we were serving across any connected TV
Yep.
segment based on channel, but we weren't specifically segmenting.
Great audience targeting. So we were really bullish on this, and the analytics are really cool too. Someone saw your TV ad on a streaming platform, and then they came to your website and took an action, like that level of reporting. Here, now we're talking about garbage trash. Snapchat and Twitter, you do not need to spend money on these platforms. We've tested them. We spent actually a decent amount of money with a client that was pretty bullish on these, and we're not going to do it again. The results were pretty dismal. Like the cost per everything was really high. The results were non-existent. So we don't recommend these channels. Even if it makes sense for your audience, like even if your audience is there, if you are outcome focused, you want people to do something on your website or any kind of lead gen, which is pretty much the lane that Pintler Group sticks in, we don't recommend these. And then lastly, this is one that's been working out really well for us is, so many companies want to drive traffic to their website, and the step that gets missed, the step that a lot of people overlook is what happens once they're on your website. This is really the focus of the next presentation you'll hear. But we've been spending a lot of time, money, and energy investing in tools and tactics that improve on-page conversion rates. Let's look at a quick success story. Domino's. Definitely a company that runs an anti-fragile playbook. How Domino's Pizza drove a 90x increase in stock value by acting like a tech startup. Startups can learn some of the most valuable lessons on product and marketing from the growth of the world's biggest pizza chain. Let's look at some quick stats. Their 90% or their main channel, technically 85%, is digital orders. So people go to the website and they order. And that breakdown is carry out. They order carry out on the website and then through the app 35%, 50% of the time, and then through the app 35% of the time. Here are some of the small future bets that Domino is making. They might say something like CarPlay and screens in cars will continue to improve and increase in adoption. So what do? They invest in development. Let's make sure that people can order Domino's directly from their car. This is another small future bet. Smart TV and connected TV will surpass broadcast spending. Let's win here. Samsung Smart TV ordering, so you can order Domino's from your television. Another small future bet. People will use voice, Alexa, more than phones. We need to be active here. So you can say, hey, Alexa, open Domino's. Alexa, place the same order as last time. So they invested in this. Again, not betting the farm on this. This was not one big giant campaign. They're just placing all of these small bets. And then another small bet, social shopping and ordering will continue to gain market share. Let's stand out here. Quick side note, these two kind of busts. Didn't actually work out too well for Domino's, but they just continued to charge ahead. They're on smart TVs, they're everywhere. And once you start noticing it, you'll see like, oh, Domino's is actually pretty innovative. How about the Edibox? People like crust. Let's make the box out of the crust. All right, that was actually an April Fool's joke by Domino's, but you could imagine that it is real. And then all of this compounds into apps, downloads, and accounts. Okay, so Jay, we had sidebarred quickly on this one. You mentioned you're in the alumni office, but the foundation, if I were part of the foundation, so I know it's not immediately relevant, but you might say to yourself, a large percentage of alumni donations come from a tiny percentage of alumni, maybe 90-10, and maybe it's even higher, So if I were part of the alumni office or the foundation office and I was thinking, how do I apply this barbell method to my business? You should still be spending a lot of that time on that tiny percentage of high net worth donors. These are gifts, these are calls, VIP suites, red carpets, those kinds of things. But then 10% figuring out channels that support what would happen if our large donor faucet just turned off. Can we nurture recent grads who someday also become large donors? Okay, last couple slides. Kodak was fragile, as we've learned. Ex-Kodak employees, however, played their cards right. Their skills transferred when their main source of revenue, aka their salaries, just vaporized, and they started small companies. They adapted. They were anti-fragile. There is no longer any anchor tenants employing 80% of the city. Rochester placed a lot of small bets in a lot of small companies. Thousands of businesses there today are thriving. Since I'm from Rochester, I didn't want you to think it was still invaded by pigeons, so it's a great place, just so you don't think it's still occupied by pigeons, and Rochester is anti-fragile. Thank you.